When Queen Camilla leaned in to greet young Princess Charlotte, she didn't realize Catherine was quietly watching from afar. What happened next changed the mood of the whole day. It started like any usual spring weekend at Windsor Castle, perfectly timed, filled with formal duties and set against familiar surroundings. But something about this family gathering made Princess Catherine uneasy. Over the years, she had learned to trust her instincts, especially around her children. Some moments just felt different, and this one lingered in her mind. Drop a comment with number 1 and follow along as we explore the hidden tensions in this fictional royal story. That day, Charlotte seemed unusually subdued, not upset or frustrated, just distant, as though she hoped no one would notice her at all. It wasn't like her in the slightest. The family had gathered at Windsor Castle for a small private luncheon, celebrating one of the Queen Consort's recent community projects. Events like this weren't rare, but they tended to pull several generations of the royal circle into one space. Camilla's longtime companions, Catherine's relatives, and a rotating mix of extended royals didn't always mesh as smoothly as the public imagined. Catherine didn't dislike these gatherings, but she always moved through them with a certain vigilance. While Prince William could ease into his public persona without effort, she felt responsible for noticing every small detail around her. That afternoon, Charlotte was invited to join a cluster of younger royal cousins in an adjoining sitting room. The setting was refined, yet by palace standards surprisingly casual. The children were expected to stay well-mannered, chat politely, and enjoy their afternoon tea, while the adults mingled in the main hall. Catherine guided Charlotte to her place, pressed a soft kiss to her forehead, and stepped out after one more lingering look. Everything appeared normal, at least for now. But something felt different afterward. Around 45 minutes into the event, Catherine was chatting with a senior courtier when she noticed Charlotte slipping past an open doorway in the corridor. She wasn't in tears yet. Her face was drained of color, and her mouth drawn into a thin, tense line. She looked wounded, not the kind caused by a tumble, but something quieter, something inside. Catherine broke off her conversation without hesitation and followed. She found Charlotte standing by herself at the far end of the hallway, close to a discreet service entrance. The girl's fingers were laced tightly together, held close to her chest, her gaze fixed firmly on the floor. "What's going on, sweetheart?" Catherine asked quietly. Charlotte paused before answering. "It's nothing, Mama," but Catherine lowered herself until they were face to face. "I can always tell when something's off," she murmured. Charlotte's reply came out in a whisper. "Camilla said you were showing off. She said you shouldn't speak unless someone asks you to." Catherine froze. "When did she say that?" "When I helped Louis with an answer," Charlotte explained. "We were just playing a guessing game." She swallowed hard, but she got upset. Catherine didn't answer immediately. Instead, she wrapped Charlotte in her arms, steady on the outside, though something inside her had quietly realigned. She had always worked to keep things cordial with Camilla, even if their connection felt more like a carefully choreographed routine than a genuine rapport. Camilla held firm ideas about rank and propriety, and while she often hid them behind polite expressions, her tone occasionally revealed what she truly meant. Still, Catherine had assumed that the subtle jabs and periodic dismissiveness would never reach her children. But she realized now that she'd been mistaken. Later, Catherine stayed close to Charlotte as the family strolled through the gardens. Camilla walked ahead with King Charles, linked arm in arm, chatting as though the entire morning had passed without the slightest friction. Catherine kept her gaze on her, thoughtful and steady. Now it wasn't only about a single remark. It was about the fact that Charlotte had felt she needed to bury her feelings instead of speaking them aloud. After the walk through the gardens, the family regrouped inside. Catherine watched everything with quiet precision. At one point, Charlotte reached for a second scone at the buffet table. Camilla glanced over, offered a measured smile, and said, "Maybe just one is best, sweetheart. We wouldn't want to seem overindulgent, would we?" And there it was again. Catherine recognized it now. This wasn't an isolated slip. It was a pattern. Little remarks that taken alone could seem harmless, but when aimed at the same child again and again formed a weight that couldn't be ignored. Catherine didn't respond immediately. She wasn't someone who caused a scene, but her quietness was always deliberate, and now she had every reason not to stay quiet anymore. William hadn't caught any of it. He was wrapped up in conversation with Charles and a few senior aides going over upcoming plans. But that evening back at Adelaide Cottage, Catherine intended to raise the issue not as a future queen, but as a mother who could no longer overlook what she had witnessed. Yet before she had the chance to start that discussion, something unexpected happened. Catherine hadn't joined royal life expecting it to be simple. She knew the duties, the unspoken expectations, and the constant balancing act between public appearances and private realities. But there was one line she would never let be crossed, and never forgive anyone making her child feel small, especially someone from within the family circle. The moment arrived shortly after the tea was cleared. The adults drifted into a sitting room adjoining the main exhibition hall, a long-standing routine from the Queen's era. The children were allowed a short period to linger before the nanny escorted them upstairs. Charlotte entered with George and Louis, her face calm and unreadable. She settled by the fireplace, pulling a book from the shelf to occupy herself. Camilla appeared moments later carrying a glass of water, softly laughing with a longtime aide. She seemed cheerful, briefly acknowledged the children with a polite smile, then returned to the adults. Yet within minutes, the laughter had faded. George and Louis gravitated toward their grandfather standing near Charles, while Charlotte remained alone in the armchair. A few moments later, Charlotte spoke up softly. "May I play the piano for a little while?" Camilla paused and turned. "The piano?" "Yes," Charlotte replied. Just a bit quietly, Camilla took a sip of water, then fixed her gaze on Charlotte. "Sweetheart, that's not necessary. Let the adults have their piece. Why not just sit still like a proper little lady?" Her tone wasn't raised nor harsh, but it was intentional. The words landed with precision. Charlotte's cheeks warmed with embarrassment. She quietly closed her book and clasped her hands together in her lap. Catherine had heard every word. She was nearby conversing quietly with Lady Lansdowne, but her eyes kept drifting between Charlotte and Camilla. She didn't speak immediately yet. Her gaze lingered longer than usual, and Camilla noticed. Their eyes met briefly before Camilla averted hers. The room carried on conversations, picking up as if nothing had happened, yet the energy had shifted. That night at Adelaide Cottage, Catherine tucked Charlotte into bed herself. The house was unusually still. William was finishing a call with his private secretary, and George was already asleep in his room. Catherine perched on the edge of Charlotte's bed and asked softly, "Were you upset today?" Charlotte hesitated. "A little, but I'm fine." "You don't have to hide how you feel," Catherine said gently. Charlotte nodded, her voice small. "Granny Camilla doesn't like it when I speak too much." It was the truth, clear and undeniable. Catherine pressed a gentle kiss to Charlotte's forehead, then stood and made her way down the hallway. Passing William's study, he looked up. "Are you all right?" he asked. "I'm trying," Catherine replied. William leaned back in his chair. "What happened?" Calmly but firmly, Catherine recounted everything. She repeated Charlotte's words, then detailed the cold remarks, subtle dismissiveness, and the repeated ways Charlotte had been minimized. William listened silently, his expression tightening. When she finished, he clenched his jaw. "We can't let this slide," she said. "I agree," he answered, "but we'll approach it carefully." The following morning, Catherine decided Charlotte would stay home, skipping the next scheduled engagement. It was a charity garden project organized by Camilla for the royal children. Catherine explained Charlotte's absence as a mild cold, but the real reason was that she no longer wanted her daughter in that setting, not until she felt certain it was safe. The news reached Camilla that Charlotte wouldn't be attending. She said little, simply raising an eyebrow when an aide mentioned it, then muttered under her breath, "Perhaps too fragile for a bit of dirt." Catherine heard it clearly. In royal circles, what's left unsaid often speaks the loudest. The situation might have remained contained if not for what unfolded the following weekend. It was a small private dinner at Highgrove. Charles had invited William and Catherine, hoping for a calm evening together. The plan was simple: share family time, reconnect, and go over upcoming royal engagements. But when Catherine entered the main sitting room with Charlotte, who had only come to wish her grandfather good night before heading to bed, tensions rose unexpectedly. Camilla barely glanced up from her chair near the fireplace. Charlotte stepped in, offering a polite smile. "Good evening, Granny," she said softly. Camilla didn't return the gesture. Instead, she remarked, "I hope you're not too tired to be here." The barb was subtle but unmistakable, and everyone present sensed it. Catherine's gaze stayed locked on Camilla. This time, she didn't wait for later. Her silence alone carried weight, shifting the energy in the room. The courteous smile she'd worn upon entering had vanished, replaced by a sharper, more deliberate edge. Catherine turned to Charlotte and said softly, "Why don't you say goodnight to Grandpa, and then go upstairs with Anna?" Slightly puzzled, Charlotte glanced at her mother. Catherine gave a reassuring nod. The girl crossed the room, hugged Charles, and then followed the nanny upstairs. Once the door clicked shut, the room felt heavier, the silence almost tangible. Camilla stayed seated, glass of wine in hand, eyes drifting around the room, before she muttered under her breath, "The child's far too sensitive, isn't she?" William tensed. Charles shifted uneasily in his chair, but Catherine stepped forward, her voice calm yet firm. "No, she's not too sensitive. She's a child and she deserves to be treated with kindness." Camilla raised a single eyebrow. "I didn't mean it that way. I just thought she might be tired at this hour. There's nothing to worry about." Catherine didn't flinch. "It's not only tonight. This has been going on for weeks. I've heard what's been said to her, and so has she." The atmosphere turned noticeably colder. Charles attempted to step in. "Darling, maybe we should—" "No," Catherine interrupted, calm yet unwavering. "If it were an isolated comment, perhaps it could be overlooked. But this is not a one-time incident. It's a repeated pattern, and I will not stand by while my daughter is made to feel small." Camilla glanced at William, perhaps expecting him to intervene, but he stayed quiet. His silence carried more weight than any words could. "I've tried to maintain the peace," Catherine went on, her voice steady, "because that's what's expected of me. I've let small things slide, but this is different. This concerns Charlotte, and I will not allow anyone, no matter their status, to diminish her confidence." Camilla set her glass of wine down and finally leaned forward, her expression unreadable. "You're overreacting," Camilla said. "You always take these things too seriously. Kids are tougher than you think." Catherine's expression remained steady. Children notice how they are treated, especially by those who are supposed to care for and protect them. There was no outburst, no raised voice yet. The conviction in her words was unmistakable. It was the voice of a mother who had drawn an unbreakable line. William finally broke the silence. "All we're asking for is basic respect. Charlotte hasn't done anything wrong. She's just being herself. That shouldn't be an issue." Camilla glanced at Charles, but he stayed quiet, knowing better than to interfere. Catherine had drawn her line, and once that was done, there was no turning back. After several tense moments, Catherine excused herself and left William following soon after. Upstairs, Catherine settled again by Charlotte's bed. This time, she didn't ask if something was wrong. She simply held her daughter's hand. "You haven't done anything wrong," she said gently. "You were polite. You were kind. That's all I ask." Charlotte looked up at her. "I tried." "You don't have to try to be perfect," Catherine replied softly. "You just have to be yourself." Downstairs, Charles tried to lighten the mood by steering the conversation elsewhere. Camilla offered little in response. She didn't apologize yet. She also refrained from offering any defense. That night at Adelaide Cottage, Catherine and William spoke in their private room. Catherine stayed composed, though the weight of the day was evident. "She doesn't have to like me," Catherine said softly, "but she must show Charlotte respect. That's non-negotiable." "She will," William assured her, "because we won't allow this to continue." The days that followed were outwardly polite, yet subtly altered. For Charlotte's upcoming school performance at Lambrook, Catherine chose to invite only close family. Camilla was not included. Officially, the palace cited a scheduling conflict, but those in the know understood the underlying message. In the press, nothing appeared amiss. Smiling photographs were released portraying unity and elegance, yet behind closed doors, a quiet shift had taken place. Camilla continued to attend major events, but she kept her distance from Charlotte. No more casual jabs, no lingering stares, at least none within Catherine's hearing. Catherine had established a firm boundary. Even in a family steeped in centuries of hierarchy and protocol, some lines cannot be crossed without consequences. Yet the matter was far from resolved. Camilla had been warned, but she had not forgotten. And when the family gathered at Balmoral that summer, another encounter would push tensions to the edge once again. Balmoral had always been Charles's sanctuary, a place to breathe, walk, and reflect without the constant glare of cameras. For decades, it had been the late Queen's cherished retreat, and the family still followed that rhythm. Every summer they gathered there. It was tradition. But this year, beneath the crisp Scottish air and serene landscape, the mood felt different. Catherine agreed to attend, but with firm boundaries. She and William brought all three children as usual. Yet Catherine made it clear to William that under no circumstances would she leave Charlotte alone with Camilla. Everyone arrived according to the multi-day schedule. Charles was the first to welcome them to the estate arms open, cheerful, genuinely delighted to see his grandchildren and eager to spend time with them. Camilla arrived the following day, accompanied by her usual entourage and impeccably chosen wardrobe. Since the incident at Highgrove, she had been unusually reserved. She had avoided speaking directly to Catherine, exchanging only brief, formal words at public appearances. The first few days at Balmoral passed without incident. Long walks, horseback rides, dinners filled with laughter. Charlotte began to unwind. Catherine watched as her daughter gradually returned to her usual self, chatting animatedly at breakfast, racing across the fields with George and Louis, even helping a member of the kitchen staff bake cakes one afternoon. But the pivotal moment arrived while Catherine was in the sitting room with Lady Sarah Chatto and a few aides. William had gone fishing with Charles. The children were playing in the garden, watched over by two staff members. It was the first time since arriving that Catherine had let her attention wander for more than a few minutes. Then a palace aide leaned in and whispered, "Princess Charlotte is in the sunroom with the Queen." Catherine froze, her heart skipping a beat. She didn't move at once, but the words reverberated in her mind. Without hesitation, she excused herself and hurried toward the sunroom. As she neared the sunroom, Catherine heard two voices, one unmistakably Camilla's, the other Charlotte's. She paused, straining to listen. "We don't always have to overshadow others," Camilla said. "It's important to listen. Sometimes even your mother forgets that." Charlotte remained silent. Catherine pushed the door open. Camilla looked up, startled, her composure flickering for a brief moment. "I've been looking for you," Catherine said evenly. "I'm looking for you, my darling." Charlotte stood and walked straight to her mother. "We were simply talking," Camilla said, her voice calm but carrying a subtle sharpness. "I heard that," Catherine replied. Camilla raised an eyebrow. "The child was merely—" Catherine interrupted, still composed. "The child is just a child, and she doesn't need to be corrected every time she speaks." Camilla crossed her arms. "I've raised children. I know when a girl is maturing too quickly for her own good. The child is maturing just fine," Catherine replied firmly. "And she will do so without being made to feel like a problem." There was no shouting, only a steady clarity that left no room for dispute. "I want to see more kindness shown toward her," Catherine added. "That shouldn't be too much to ask." Camilla remained silent. Her quietness was deliberate, but Catherine no longer cared. She had spent years safeguarding the institution. Now her priority was something far more vital, protecting her daughter. After they left the room, Catherine knelt beside Charlotte in the hallway. "You did nothing wrong," she whispered. Charlotte nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "You never have to be afraid to speak up," Catherine reassured her. By the end of the weekend, palace staff observed that Camilla kept her distance. At meals, she sat farther from the children, making no remarks about their manners, attire, or conversation. The change was subtle, but in the royal world, subtlety carries weight. Catherine didn't raise her voice or cause a scene, yet her presence established a boundary no one dared cross. Even Charles, who had hoped time might ease the tension, knew better than to step in. He loved both women deeply, but he recognized that when Catherine stood her ground, it was with deliberate purpose and unwavering resolve. That summer concluded with the familiar images the family posed on the castle steps, smiling for the cameras, waving to well-wishers. But behind the polished exterior, everything had shifted. Camilla had lost the quiet patience Catherine had once extended for the sake of appearances. That patience was gone. And while the public saw a united royal family behind closed doors, a mother had ensured her daughter would never again feel diminished.